It's a Tuesday night, and he's sitting on a secondhand couch in a one-bedroom apartment that doesn't quite feel like home yet. Laptop open, bank account on screen, $1,840. He got paid Friday, he's not broke. That's the thing nobody would believe. He pays his rent on time. He eats real food. He goes out on weekends. He bought new tires last month without panicking. He opens a new tab and types something he's never typed before. How much should I have saved by now? The first result loads. He reads it once. Then again. Then he closes the laptop. Not because the information was complicated, but because it wasn't. The answer was 4 words and a number, and the number was so far from his number that his brain couldn't hold both of them at the same time. He sat in the dark for a while. Here's what the screen said. Financial planners generally recommend having 1 times your annual salary saved by your late 20s. 1 times. That meant his target was $54,000. He had $1,840. Not close to $54,000. Not approaching $54,000. $1,840. And the part that stayed with him, the part that sat in his chest like a stone, wasn't the gap. Gaps can be closed. The part that stayed was the math he hadn't run yet. The math about what it actually costs, not in a single lump sum, not in shame and regret, but in real compounding dollars across real decades. When you spend your 20s not investing, that math is brutal. And this video is going to walk you through every bit of it. My name is Randy. A few years ago, my savings account had $812 in it. I made decent money. I had been making decent money for a while. I had almost nothing to show for it, and the reason wasn't that I spent recklessly. The reason was that I kept waiting for the right moment to start. The right moment kept not arriving. And the cost of that waiting, I eventually discovered, wasn't a number I could recover from easily. What I found when I finally ran the math changed how I thought about every dollar I'd touched since I was 22. This video is that math. All of it. Here's the misconception that costs most people the most money. They believe that investing in your 20s is one of several equally good options. Start now. Start at 30. Start at 35. As long as you eventually get serious about it, it all evens out. That is not what happens. Your 20s are not just the early pages of your financial story. They are a completely different category of time, the kind that, once it passes, does not come back at any price. What most people never realize until it is too late is this. The money you invest in your 20s doesn't just grow, it becomes the engine that grows everything that comes after it. Strip out those years, and you are not simply starting later. You are starting without the engine. Everything you contribute afterward has to work harder for longer to do what those early dollars would have done on their own. By the end of this, you will understand exactly what that means in specific dollar terms. Not a vague warning, a specific number, a specific gap, and a version of your life decades from now that you can still choose not to have, but only if you look at it directly first. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the most detailed snapshot of American household wealth that exists, shows the median retirement savings for people between 55 and 64 years old is $134,000. Let that sit for a second. $134,000. For people 5 to 10 years from the standard retirement finish line. People who have been in the workforce for 35 years. People who in many cases made decent money for most of those years. At a 4% annual withdrawal rate, the standard benchmark financial planners use to keep a portfolio alive through retirement, $134,000 generates $5,360 a year. That is $446 a month. You cannot live on $446 a month. You cannot even supplement a life on $446 a month. So Social Security becomes not a bonus on top of savings. It becomes the floor. The only floor. The median Social Security benefit right now sits at roughly $1,700 a month. Add 446, you are at $2,146 a month, total, for the rest of your life. That is the median retirement reality in America. And most of the people in that statistic had incomes, had decades, had the same 20s sitting in front of them that you have, or once had. What happened to those years? They became the years they were going to start. Two people. Same city, same salary, same rent, same student loans. One decision, one made differently at the very beginning. This is Carla and this is Danielle. Both of them land their first real jobs earning $48,000 a year. Same city, same expenses, same social life, same financial pressure that comes with being young and trying to build something from scratch. Danielle opens a Roth IRA and sets up an automatic transfer. $300 a month. Not a dramatic sacrifice, not a lifestyle overhaul. $300 a month. $3,600 a year. She also contributes just enough to her 401k to capture the full employer match. Then she stops thinking about it. The transfer runs. Life continues. Carla means to do the same. She genuinely does. But $300 a month feels heavy right now. There are student loans. The car is unreliable. She'll start when things settle down. Things don't settle down. They shift shape. A raise becomes a bigger apartment. More stability becomes more expenses. At 30, Carla is earning $62,000 a year, feels more grounded than ever, and finally opens her Roth IRA. Sets up the same $300 automatic transfer. Just like Danielle, 6 years later. Now here's what those 6 years actually cost. Danielle invested $300 a month for 6 years before Carla made her first contribution. 72 months. $21,600 out of pocket. At 8% average annual return, the long-run average of a diversified index fund portfolio slightly below the historical average of the S&P 500. Those contributions grew to approximately $27,900 by the time Carla finally starts. Carla has essentially zero. From that point forward, both of them invest $300 a month. Same fund, same return, same discipline. Danielle just has a $27,900 head start that Carla did not choose to give her. It simply accumulated while Carla was meaning to begin. Here is what that head start becomes. By the time both of them are 40, Danielle has approximately $214,000. Carla has approximately $161,000. The gap between them, $53,000, is already larger than everything either of them contributed across that entire decade. By 50, Danielle sits at approximately $523,000. Carla is at approximately $393,000. The gap is $130,000. Neither of them deposited an extra $130,000. The gap grew itself, silently, automatically, without asking anyone's permission. By 60, Danielle has approximately $1,193,000. Carla has approximately $896,000. The gap is $297,000. Read that again. $297,000, and Carla did nothing wrong after 30. She was disciplined. She showed up every single month. She never stopped. She matched Danielle contribution for contribution across 30 years of identical investing behavior. And she still arrived at $6,297,000 behind because of 6 years at the beginning. 6 years when the money was cheapest. 6 years when every dollar had the most time to compound. 6 years of meaning to start. That is not a rounding error. That is a house. That is a decade of not having to work. That is the difference between retiring because you chose to and working until someone tells you that you have to stop. Here's what nobody tells you about the employer match. A Vanguard research report found that roughly 1 in 4 workers with access to a 401k match failed to contribute enough to capture it fully. 1 in 4. The average employer match runs around 4.4% of salary. On a $55,000 salary, that is $2,420 a year, deposited into your account the moment you deposit yours, not a market return. Not a gamble. Free money that requires only one thing: showing up. Here is what leaving it uncaptured actually costs. If you leave $2,420 a year on the table for the first 6 years of your career, just those 6 years, and that money had instead been invested at 8% and left alone until 60, the amount missing from your retirement account is approximately $127,000. Not in contributions, in your account, compounding, growing, waiting for a version of you that never came. Some people in their 20s skip the employer match because cash feels tight. That decision costs them, on average, over $100,000 at the other end. Not because the amount was large, because of when it happened. Stick with me here, because the next part is the one most people never calculate. It is not just the gap at retirement that matters. It is what closing that gap actually requires of you in the years between now and then. Let's go back to Carla and Danielle. Danielle at 40 has $214,000 and a clear runway. She can maintain $300 a month without changing anything and retire as a millionaire. The math is completely on her side. Carla at 40 has $161,000 and a choice. She can keep doing what she is doing and retire with $896,000, comfortable, not free. Or she can try to close the gap. Here is what closing it actually requires. To end up in the same place as Danielle, approximately $1,193,000. Carla would need to increase her monthly contribution from $300 to approximately $470. An extra $170 every single month for the next 20 years. $170 a month she cannot put toward her children's education, her mortgage, the life she is living and would like to keep living. That money is owed, not to a bank, not to a lender, but to the version of herself that wasn't there at the start. And most people never make that adjustment. Vanguard's How America Saves report shows the median employee contribution rate has hovered around 7.4% of salary for years. When people realize they are behind, the majority absorb the information and continue exactly as before. So Carla stays at $300 a month. She arrives at 60 with $896,000, a number she can live on. Carefully, she looks at Danielle's situation and tries to trace when the distance between them opened. It opened before either of them knew there was a race. Here's the real reason the 20s don't feel like the right time. It is not irresponsibility, it is something more specific. And once you see it, you will recognize it everywhere. At $300 a month, the account balance after 1 year sits around $3,700. After 2 years, approximately $7,800. The math is working. The compounding has started. And it feels like absolutely nothing. Nothing about $7,800 announces itself as the foundation of future wealth. It sits there quietly. The rational response, the one almost everyone has, is to treat it the way it feels, insignificant. Meanwhile, $300 a month feels real. It feels like 6 decent dinners, a weekend away, an upgrade on something you use every day. The account is invisible. The spending is visible. Every marketing system built in the last 100 years exists to ensure your money finds visible spending before it can reach an invisible account. The consumer economy spent over $600 billion on advertising in 2023. Not to entertain you, to win the competition for your dollar before your investment account does. The people who invest in their 20s are not more disciplined than the people who don't. They automated the transfer before the competition could begin. Danielle's $300 moved on the first of the month, before the money registered as available, before it ever existed as something spendable in her mind. Carla moved money manually at the end of the month, after expenses, after the unexpected thing, after the thing she didn't plan for but handled anyway. The end of the month became a concept rather than a moment. Not because Carla lacked discipline. Because the decision lived where it competed with everything else. Automation removes the decision entirely. You cannot spend what has already moved. Not hedge fund managers. Not people with inherited money softening every mistake. The Ramsey Solutions National Study of Millionaires, over 10,000 participants, the largest study of its kind, found that the single most common profession among American millionaires is teacher. Followed by engineer, accountant, manager, and attorney. 79% received no inheritance. 8 in 10 built it themselves, from ordinary incomes, from early automatic transfers that felt like nothing for years before they became everything. The dental hygienist in Columbus with $1,100,000 in her retirement account. the high school history teacher in Phoenix who retired at 60 with enough invested to generate $52,000 a year without touching the principal. The warehouse manager in Charlotte, $68,000 a year for most of his career, who retired with $890,000 because he started young and never let himself opt out. None of them looked wealthy from the outside. Ordinary cars, modest houses, invisible accounts. And the outcome, when it arrived, looked like luck to everyone who hadn't watched the decades that came before it. It was not luck, it was time used before time got expensive. Back to the man on the second-hand couch, he closed the laptop that Tuesday night. He sat in the dark for a while, not spiraling, just thinking, running the math in his head, trying to understand what the gap actually meant and whether there was anything left to do about it. The next morning, he opened the laptop again. He spent about 40 minutes researching Roth IRA options. He picked one. He set up an automatic transfer for $250 a month. Not $300, not the ideal number, but the number he could actually move without it creating a new problem. He did not tell anyone. There was nothing to tell. The balance after month one was $253. It felt like nothing. But here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. It has an expiration date. The accounts that feel like nothing in month one are the exact accounts that feel like everything in year 25. The silence of a growing account is not emptiness. It is time working on your behalf, which is the only version of money that works harder than you do. He understood that, sitting there in the dark with the laptop closed. The math had been brutal. It still was, but brutal math, seen clearly, is more useful than comfortable math that turns out to be wrong. He moved. That was the whole thing. You did not end up where you are because of a character flaw. You ended up here because no one put this math in front of you at the moment it had the most power. No one showed you the graph. No one named the cost before it started running. So the question is not whether you were late. The question is what you do now that you can see it. If the window is still open for you, $300 a month, automated, before the month gives you a reason to spend it instead. Open the account tonight. Not this week, not after the next paycheck, because your brain will convert this into a future intention before you finish the drive home, and future intentions do not compound. If the window has narrowed, the math changed, but the math still works. You need more, for longer, starting now. The gap is growing without your participation every single month, and the only thing that stops it is a number, automated, and left alone. You have the math now. That part is done. The only question left is whether you use it. If this is the kind of thinking you want more of, the kind that costs you 15 minutes now instead of years later, subscribe. One video a week. That is the whole offer. The account grows in silence. Start the silence tonight.